March 15th, 1964, 12-year-old Mary Theresa Simpson was walking home in Elmira, New York. It should have taken only a few minutes, but Mary never made it home.
Generations would pass, and just when it seemed the truth might be lost forever, a tiny fragment of DNA would finally reveal the man responsible through modern forensic science. This is the story of one of America's oldest cold cases ever solved through modern forensic science.
In March of 1964, Elmira was a small city in upstate New York. Families knew their neighbors. Children often walked places alone. For 12-year-old Mary Theresa Simpson, March 15th began like any other day. She spent time visiting relatives before starting the walk home. Around 6:30 in the evening, she was last seen alive. Nobody knew it then, but this would be the last confirmed sighting of Mary.
Imagine the concern. A child who should have arrived home doesn't. Minutes become hours. Hours become panic. And somewhere in Elmira, a predator had already made his move.
4 days later, the search ended in tragedy. Mary's body was discovered in a wooded area near Combs Hill Road, roughly 7 miles from where she had last been seen. Investigators quickly determined that she had been sexually assaulted. She had been murdered. Mary's family entered a nightmare that would last decades.
When a child is murdered, time becomes the enemy. Every passing day means memories fade, witnesses disappear, evidence deteriorates. And in 1964, investigators lacked many of the forensic tools we take for granted today.
No DNA databases, no genetic genealogy, no advanced forensic testing, only traditional detective work.
Despite extensive investigation, no arrest was made. No suspect was charged. Years passed, then decades. Eventually, the case became what investigators call a cold case. Not forgotten, but unsolved. For Mary's family, the passage of time did not lessen the loss. Her sister Linder say that she thought about Mary every day. The unanswered questions never disappeared. Why Mary? Who did this? And would anyone ever be held accountable?
Many cold cases die because evidence is lost, destroyed, misplaced, or contaminated. But in this case, something remarkable happened. Someone made a decision that would eventually change everything. The evidence was preserved. Investigators retained clothing connected to the crime for decades, stored and protected, long after many believed the case might never be solved. As forensic science evolved, that preserved evidence became increasingly valuable. In 2003, DNA recovered from Mary's clothing was entered into a national database. No match. Years later, investigators tried again. Still no match. The killer remained unidentified. But unlike earlier generations of detectives, investigators now had something new: DNA, the biological fingerprint that criminals cannot easily erase.
At this point, many departments would have exhausted every available lead, but technology was changing faster than anyone expected. And a revolutionary investigative method was about to transform cold case missions forever. Genetic genealogy.
Genetic genealogy combines traditional family tree research with DNA analysis. Instead of searching for the suspect directly, investigators search for relatives, distant cousins, shared ancestors, family connections. Then they work forward through generations until they identify a likely suspect. The method gained worldwide attention after helping identify the Golden State Killer. And now, investigators hoped it could help solve Mary's murder. There was just one problem. Very little DNA remained.
Investigators had only a tiny amount left, about 0.4 of a nanogram. An amount so small it was effectively their final opportunity. If this attempt failed, there might never be another chance.
In one of the most unbelievable moments of the entire investigation, disaster nearly struck. The final DNA sample was shipped to a laboratory in Texas, But during transit, an ice storm disrupted transportation. The package became stranded. Inside was the evidence investigators had spent decades protecting, evidence that could never be replaced. The situation was so serious that FBI personnel became involved, working to locate and preserve the shipment. Eventually, the package was recovered and stored safely until it could continue its journey. The last chance had survived.
Think about that. 60 years of waiting, generations of investigators, one final DNA sample, and it nearly disappears in a winter storm. Sometimes solving a case depends on moments nobody sees.
The DNA analysis succeeded. Genealogical research began. Family trees were built. Connections were examined. And eventually, investigators arrived at a name.
This DNA evidence establishes that the identified individual was directly involved with Mary Theresa at or near the time of her death. This case must be viewed in its full context. Mary Theresa was last seen alive shortly before her body was discovered. She was a 12-year-old child, and the circumstances of her death were ruled a homicide. There is no evidence that she had consensual contact with any individual, especially an adult male. Although numerous individuals were examined over the course of this investigation, none were supported by evidence comparable to the suspect. When the forensic findings are considered alongside the historical investigation, timeline, and recovery location, the totality of the evidence supports the conclusion that the individual responsible for the sexual assault was also responsible for her death. For decades, the individual connected to the forensic evidence in this case was known only as John Doe. Through investigative genetic genealogy, that individual was identified as Alfred Murray Jr. Alfred Murray Jr. was born in Elmira, New York in 1931. He lived and worked in this community, raised a family here, and remained in Elmira for the entirety of his life. Mr. Murray passed away in 2004.
An Elmira resident. A man who had died in 2004. Investigators needed confirmation, so they obtained DNA from Murray's son. The results strengthened their suspicions. But there was still one final step.
When investigators are this closest to certainty, they need evidence strong enough to withstand scrutiny. And so they made an extraordinary decision. They sought permission to exhume Murray's remains.
Murray's body was exhumed. DNA samples were collected. Scientists compared them against the biological evidence recovered from Mary's clothing. The results were definitive. After more than 60 years, investigators had identified Mary's killer. The mystery was over. The question that haunted a family for generations finally had an answer.
There would be no trial, no conviction, no prison sentence, because Murray had already died. But there is a difference between punishment and truth. And after 61 years, truth finally arrived.
The case that had remained unsolved since 1964 was officially closed. For investigators, it represented decades of persistence. For forensic science, it demonstrated the extraordinary power of modern DNA analysis. But for Mary's family, it meant something more personal. Answers, not complete healing, not closure in the way people often imagine, but answers, the name of the man responsible, the truth of what happened, and the knowledge that Mary had not been forgotten.
Mary Theresa Simpson never got the chance to grow up. She never got the future she deserved, but after 61 years, her name is no longer attached to an unsolved mystery. Today, we know what happened. Today, we know who was responsible. And today, Mary is remembered not as a forgotten cold case, but as a child whose story finally reached the truth. Thank you for watching.